The Manifesto of Systemic Power. Anatomy of the Invisible Cage. We no longer live in a world run by humans. This is the fundamental illusion of the modern era, and perhaps the most dangerous lie we repeat daily without ever noticing. We look at presidents, we look at billionaires, we look at dictators flaunting their might in military parades and CEOs commanding corporations wealthier than entire states. And we instinctively assume they rule the world. But what we see is merely the surface, the scenery, the theater. Modern power no longer needs to be visible to be absolute. The true structure operates much deeper, colder, more impersonal. And this is the most unsettling part. The most powerful systems created by modern civilization no longer need a human master to keep functioning. This is the moment power ceases to be personal and becomes infrastructure. Any system dependent on a single human is fragile. If it relies on the leader, you can eliminate the leader. You can destroy their reputation. You can overthrow them. You can assassinate them. When the head falls, the body collapses. But modern systems have bypassed this primitive vulnerability. They understood something essential. True stability begins the moment the mechanism keeps working perfectly even after its creator has vanished. The same principle exists in biology. Primitive organisms rely on single, centralized organs. Evolved organisms distribute vital functions across adaptive, decentralized networks. The human brain works exactly this way. There is no supreme neuron controlling consciousness. Intelligence emerges from the relationship between billions of connections. Exactly the same model now defines the architecture of global power. Modern power no longer occupies a place. It circulates through financial networks, through algorithms, through digital infrastructures, through global platforms, through administrative systems that permanently self-correct. Cybernetics and complex systems theory have proven that the most stable structures do not operate through permanent vertical control, but through self-regulation. This is the critical point. The moment the system becomes so coherent that the people inside it end up maintaining it themselves, without direct coercion, without explicit orders, without even realizing it. This is the moment power ceases to be human. In the past, the death of a king could destabilize an entire empire. Today, political leaders change constantly. CEOs vanish. Governments succeed one another. And systemic infrastructures continue to function almost entirely untouched. Continuity no longer depends on the individual. It depends on the architecture. And here lies the most uncomfortable revelation. People still think about power in medieval terms. We have a psychological need to believe that someone is controlling everything. A puppeteer, a cabal, a central author of the chaos. Because it is easier to hate a human than to understand a system. But reality is much colder. In most situations, there is no actual master. There are only autonomous processes of self-propagation. Algorithms that organize your attention, platforms that shape your perception, financial networks that move trillions in milliseconds, bureaucracies that keep functioning regardless of who temporarily occupies the leadership position. Your attention has become raw material. Your behavior has become statistically predictable. And your digital life permanently generates data that trains systems larger than you. This is why modern man lives with this strange sense of existential helplessness. You collide with invisible algorithms, with absurd procedures, with automated call centers, with platforms that can alter your reality without ever offering you a genuine human interlocutor. And everywhere the same phrase appears. That's just how the system works. And the unsettling part is that the phrase, more often than not, is literally true. We are witnessing the most critical historical transition of civilization. The shift from personalized power to systemic power. Modern influence no longer requires explicit violence. It operates through invisible infrastructure, through automation, and through the subtle organization of our life possibilities. The greatest victory of a system is the moment it becomes perceived as natural, inevitable, exactly like the air. You do not see it, but it enters your lungs every single second. Contemporary power no longer functions exclusively through prohibitions. First, it organizes your field of possibilities. It distributes your attention. It filters your information. It shapes your mental reflexes from childhood. And then you perceive the result of these conditionings as a personal, autonomous choice. This is the level where control becomes nearly perfect, the moment our participation becomes voluntary. We buy our own monitoring devices. We expose our own intimate data. We furiously defend our own digital cages. Perhaps we are not living through the beginning of a classic dictatorship. Perhaps we are experiencing something far more sophisticated. A world where control has become so diffuse that there is no longer anyone we can directly confront. You cannot negotiate with a network. You cannot intimidate an algorithm. You cannot overthrow an infrastructure distributed across millions of nodes. And the great paradox is this: the very disappearance of the visible leader makes the system more stable. People revolt against faces, against names, against dictators. But how do you revolt against an atmosphere? Because that is exactly what modern influence has become: an invisible structural atmosphere inside of which we are born, think, love, and die. We build our identity through platforms developed by others. We evaluate our social worth through metrics generated algorithmically. We communicate, buy, vote, and even protest inside pre-designed architectures. And the most disturbing part is that the system no longer even needs to hide. The supreme form of control is not secrecy. It is normalization. The moment a structure becomes integrated and indispensable enough, it ceases to be perceived as power and begins to be mistaken for reality itself. And here arises the decisive question of the modern era. If all these systems self-propagate through our daily participation, through every click, every transaction, and every silent acceptance, then how much of what we call freedom truly represents authentic autonomy? And how much is just functional integration into an impersonal architecture that feeds upon us? Perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of modern civilization is not the existence of an excess of control, but the fact that we have built systems that no longer need humans to continue exercising power over humans. Perhaps the great tragedy of modern man is not that he has been locked in a cage, but that he has built one so perfect that, if the door were to open tomorrow, there would be no one left who would want to leave.